on it. Anything to do with school choice also. Okay. But also, separate from school choice, we're going to take the Department of Education, close it. I'm going to close it. We'll have one person, could be you if you decide to retire.
Okay, Mr. President, here's what bothers
central casting.
here's what bothers me about that. So let's say you have a liberal city, let's Los Angeles, San Diego, and they just decide we're going to get rid of that history. We got new history. This is America built off the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that curriculum comes in.
Then we don't send them money. We would save half of our budget.
I feel like it doesn't even need commentary. Trump has always had it out for the Department of Education. He's always talked about defunding it, dismantling it, but now he's become very clear about exactly what he wants to do with it. And that equals him dismantling it entirely if schools decide to teach history. That's where we are. If you teach history as it happened, you're labeled as a woke mob, and they will no longer send you funding for education. It's all just part of Project 2025, which he's not a part of, by the way. Of course not. Mentions his name over 100 times, and everything he states is that he wants to do is in Project 2025, but he's not involved in that, no. But decreasing funding or completely abolishing funding for schools that do want to teach history as it happened is not the only plan that Trump has for the children of this country when it comes to their education.
A lot of tax money coming from the Department of Education that is funding radical curriculums instead of funding the curriculums that are going to teach our kids how to read, how to write, and how to do arithmetic. We got to get back to common sense education. The second very basic principle is that we believe that every Pennsylvania child, and especially their parents, ought to be able to decide, to choose for themselves where those kids go to school. So we believe in school choice.
Now that sounds nice, right? We believe that all students and their families should be able to choose which school they go to. That sounds like a nice choice for the families, for the students. However, there is a lot of rhetoric coming from J.D. Vance and Donald Trump really pushing charter schools, which in and of themselves have their place, aren't necessarily objectively bad, but what they do is if you focus all your attention and efforts on charter schools, that takes funding away from public schools. And it leaves already struggling school districts to struggle more with less funding than they already receive, which is practically nothing.
I think just the fact that you couldn't answer yes or no when you look at this terrible rating of charter schools, this is why people have a worry that there could be a conflict or something else.
You're
because
wrong
if
about
they're not performing
schools.
Academically, yeah, but if 40% are closing down that you're giving grants to,
that is not true. That has been a
resources.
totally debunked report. It was nothing but propaganda by an individual who has an in for charter schools.
So what percent of charter schools are failing? Do you have an idea? A number?
I
Any
don't
number?
have a state.
You're the Secretary of
national.
Education and you don't have this? You know this report's
Charter
wrong,
schools
but you don't
are
have a number.
chartered by states.
Yeah,
They
but
are not chartered by the federal
you know
government.
that number's not right, but you don't have a correct number. Is that what you're telling
What
me?
I know is parents and families are
don't know.
choosing to
So you
send their
don't know the
children to
answer.
charter schools.
That's a yes or no, so you don't know the answer.
Parents and children
It's a yes or
are
no, so
going
you
to
don't
charter
know the
schools.
answer.
Good old Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education during Trump's administration, who was never a teacher, an educator, has a business degree, fighting hard for charter schools, actively hating public schools, and certain students, to be honest. She threatened to remove federal funding from schools if they didn't reopen mid-pandemic. She advocated to have more guns in schools, claiming that was safer. She actively fought to repeal protections that the Obama administration put in place to protect trans students. So this is where we see Trump's administration and Trump's plan for education going.
Third, we will ensure our classrooms are focused not on political indoctrination, but on teaching the knowledge and skills needed to succeed. Reading, writing, math, science, arithmetic, and other truly useful subjects. Fourth, we will teach students to love their country, not to hate their country like they're taught right now. Fifth, we will support bringing back prayer to our schools.
We're going to move away from politically indoctrinating your children by bringing prayer back into schools. My brother in Christ, what? How do people who listen to him, how do you not see the constant contradictions in everything that he's saying? How do they just go, yeah, no more indoctrination, prayer in school, 10 commandments on the wall, no indoctrination? How can you possibly, the mental gymnastics that you have to do in order to be like, yep, that's right, he's right, absolutely. It started with colleges, universities, higher education is indoctrinating your children and turning them liberal. And it's turning into further and further and down the line, earlier and earlier, cutting off funding and claiming that education, by and large, is a bad thing.
That list includes dismantle the Department of Education, end the Head Start program for young children in poverty, end the Title I funding for schools serving low-income children, rescind federal civil rights protections for LGBTQ plus students, undercut federal capacity to enforce civil rights law, reduce federal funding for students with disabilities, and remove guardrails designed to ensure that these children are adequately served by schools, privatize the federal student loan portfolio and end student loan forgiveness, and promote universal private school choice.
Why would an administration possibly want their population to be uneducated? Let's think about that for a minute. The less educated you are, the less access you have, exposure you have to people who are not like you, which is what colleges and universities do. They take people from usually all over the world, at least all over the country, and they put them together. And you meet people who are different from you, who have different experiences, and then you have different experiences, and that teaches you basic empathy. We can't other those people if you're friends with those people. If you meet them and go, oh, everything I was told about you is like not true. The more educated you are and the more experiences you have, the more you have critical thinking skills, the more you are able to think for yourself, and the harder you are to control and manipulate. As someone who focused on cults and the language of manipulation in her graduate program, please believe me when I say that this is one of the main steps to isolating and manipulating and controlling a group of people. As always, learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, talk to as many people as you can, question everything, try and learn to think for yourself. I know we have very limited time these days because they made sure that all of our time is spent going to work and just trying to survive. But please, please, please remember that critical thinking skills are so important. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out some of my content that isn't news related, you can check out my personal YouTube channel at Bad Gamer Wyatt. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.